What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. It is week 15 of fantasy hockey, and today we're going to be talking about the teams with the best and worst schedules, the streamers to maximize your games, some new power play updates, and some must-add players. Starting off, let's talk about the most off nights and look at the schedule for this week. Pretty typical in terms of the off nights: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Only 3 games max out of all of these games. 3 games on Monday, 2 games on Wednesday, 2 games on Friday, 3 games on Sunday, and obviously the heavy nights being on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And those nights are very heavy, so you're going to be sitting a lot of players. Because of the way the schedule is, there's not a lot of teams with more than 2 off nights. In fact, there's only one team that has 2 off nights this week, and that team is the Edmonton Oilers. We do have a couple of teams that have 4 games and 1 off night, which is solid. The Stars, the Red Wings, the Canadiens, the Devils, the Rangers, and the Senators. And then also the Flames, Panthers, and Flyers having that back-to-back Monday, Tuesday, having those 4 games and 1 off night as well. And sorry, I actually misspoke here. We do have 2 teams here that do have 2 off nights as well, but they only have 2 games. So these teams are the Sabres and the Hurricanes. They play Wednesday, Friday, both being off nights, but the 2 games is not ideal. You don't really want to pick up players from the Sabres or the Hurricanes for the entire week, but you can utilize them in a streaming strategy by picking them up on Wednesday and dropping them Saturday. Now, in terms of the teams with the least games, I just talked about the Sabres and the Hurricanes only having 2 games. Still good for streaming, like I said, but we do have 2 teams that only play twice, other than the Sabres and Hurricanes, of course. These teams being the Minnesota Wild, who have 2 games and 1 off night, and then the Boston Bruins, which have 2 games and 0 off nights. Now, in terms of the easiest and hardest schedule for skaters, starting with the easiest, these teams are playing teams that let in a lot of goals, so there's a chance that the skaters on these teams overperform potentially. And these teams are the Blue Jackets, the Sharks, the Capitals, the Islanders, the Sabres, and the Rangers. On the flip side, the hardest schedule for skaters are going to be these teams. These teams have a below 2.65 opponent goals against average, so the teams they're facing don't generally let in a lot of goals. These teams are the Canucks, the Ducks, the Leafs, the Bruins, the Canadiens, the Senators, the Oilers, and the Avalanche. Now, talking about some goalies here for a minute, the easiest and hardest schedule for goalies. These are teams with the below 2.81 opponent goals per game, so the teams that they're playing don't score a lot of goals. There's a chance that the goalies on these teams do pretty well this week. These teams are the Lightning, the Blues, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Capitals, the Blackhawks, the Islanders, the Blue Jackets, and the Jets. On the flip side, the hardest schedule for goalies are going to be with these 5 teams: the Ducks, the Canucks, the Bruins, the Hurricanes, and the Kraken, all playing teams that generally score a lot of goals. Moving on, let's talk about some streamers. Like I said, the only team that has 4 games and 2 off nights being the Edmonton Oilers. And realistically, you don't want to pick up any players from the Oilers for the entire week because they play on those really heavy nights on Thursday and Saturday. No, you don't want to do that. What you want to do is pick up either today, if you're watching this on Sunday, or Monday, get those 2 off nights, Monday and Wednesday, and then drop them Thursday. So that would be the streaming strategy for this. And in terms of the players that you could pick up, there's obviously not the best options on the Oilers. Nugent Hopkins could be available in a more shallow league. I think his roster percentage is like 70-something% on Yahoo. Defensemen like Ekholm and Nurse put up solid peripherals. They can put up points too. And then you have some deeper league options: Podkolzin, Arvidsson, Henrique, etc. And just quickly here, I want to give a shout out to GiddyUpSports.com. This is a free tool, if you head over to GiddyUpSports.com, that you could use. And it only works for Yahoo right now, but basically what it does is it automates your waiver wire pickup so you don't have to set your alarms to ensure you get that player. For example, guys, I want Arvidsson for Monday and Wednesday. I want those 2 off nights. Going to help me maximize my games and in turn maximize my fantasy points. So I'm going to sync my league. And what I'm going to do is schedule an ad for 3 a.m. on Monday because I'm EST time. That's when Yahoo waivers clears. And I'm going to pick up Arvidsson to get those 2 games. It's simple as that, guys. I would recommend using the desktop version. There's more info in the comments. But if you want to ensure you get players for the week, make sure you head over to GiddyUpSports.com. And honestly, it's a cheat code. Another streaming strategy that I want to talk about is picking up players on Wednesday and dropping them Saturday. You're going to get these 2 off nights being Wednesday and Friday. You don't have to pick them up for the entire week, but it's going to be solid for maximizing your games. With the Sabres, there's actually a lot of really good players available in terms of roster percentage. Tuck, only available in a more shallow league, but Jason Zucker is like 30% rostered. Peterka is like 30% rostered. Jack Quinn is 3% rostered. These guys are all power play 1 guys. And then you got some other players like Dylan Cousins, Bowen Byram, etc. With the Hurricanes, not really the best options. Natchez and Svech may be available in a very shallow league. Jarvis could be available in like an 8-team league potentially. But one guy here would be Brent Burns, who could be more available. I think he's 60% rostered. He's power play 1 with Shane Gostisbehere out. And then you have the deeper league options like Jack Roslovic, Jordan Staal, who's been very good lately. But guys, he's going to cool down. It's funny seeing his roster percentage skyrocket. Like, this is not going to last. But then you have some other guys like Jordan Martinook and Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Moving on, let's talk about some power play updates. With the Bruins, they were splitting units earlier on in the week where Mason Lohrei was on that power play 1. But last game, they went back to a normal power play 1 with Zacha, Marchand, Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Lindholm. So I don't know what they're going to do, guys. They've been mixing it up a little bit because their power play hasn't been great and McAvoy hasn't been great in the power play. So Lohrei could be an option in a deeper league as a speculative ad for the long term. But yeah, they went back to normal power play 1 last game. So we'll see. Then with the Carolina Hurricanes, Brent Burns is power play 1 with Shane Gostisbehere out. Ty Smith was put on waivers. It looks like it's going to be Burns, but you could see maybe Orlov get a shot if Burns doesn't perform on there. So I like Burns as an ad if you really need a defenseman. And we also have to talk about the Colorado Avalanche here. Lehkonen is power play 1 and Middlestat is power play 2. The only reason Lehkonen is power play 1, though, is because Valeri Nichushkin is injured. Nichushkin is going to be back soon, so don't expect Lehkonen to be power play 1 long term. It's pretty much going to be Drouin and Nichushkin as long as those guys are healthy. So yeah, just a short-term deployment bump for Artturi Lehkonen. With the Florida Panthers, Verhaeghe is back on power play 1. That's very good news for Verhaeghe owners. Still line 3, though. And we also have a defenseman update here. We have Nate Schmidt being power play 1 last game with Aaron Ekblad out. He re-aggravated an injury that he had. It's only deemed day-to-day, I believe, but something to keep an eye out for if this injury continues to pop up. With the Minnesota Wild, Faber and Spurgeon are out. Spurgeon is out more long-term. Faber is day-to-day. But with this injury, we have Declan Chisholm on power play 1. If you are really desperate for a defenseman in a deeper league, Chisholm could be an okay option in the short term. With the New York Islanders, we have them going back to sort of a regular power play 1. And with that, we have Brock Nelson on the top unit finally. He hasn't been power play 1 for the majority of the season. So this could be good news for his potential long term. With the Rangers, we have Alexis Lafreniere power play 1 with Chris Kreider on IR. I believe this was retroactive, and he's only day-to-day right now, so only a short-term bump, but that's what it is right now. We also have with the Pittsburgh Penguins, Michael Bunting is power play 1 with Malkin out. They were splitting power play units, but with Malkin being injured, they went back to a top power play unit with Bunting, Raquel, Rust, Crosby, and Erik Karlsson. I'm sure when Malkin comes back, they'll probably split the units again. But for now, with Malkin injured, Bunting is going to be a very solid option. Then with the San Jose Sharks, Jake Wallman is back, healthy. He's on power play 1, had a very good game. He had an assist, a couple of peripherals. And we also have Alex Wemberg out. And with him being out, we have William Eklund power play 1. I would love to see Eklund power play 1 long term. We don't know if that's going to happen, but for now, Eklund gets a bump to his fantasy value. Now with the St. Louis Blues, they are still splitting their units. They have Fowler, Thomas, and Buchnevich on the 1A power play. Might be the 1B. And then we have Kyrou and Falk on the 1B. And then with the Leafs, Knies was power play 1 for a game or two there, but then they moved him back to power play 2. And that means Morgan Rielly is back on the top unit. Good news for Morgan Rielly owners. Now we have 2 more updates here. We have Josh Doan on the power play 1 and also line 2. Dylan Guenther is out indefinitely. Very sad news if you picked up Guenther or you drafted him. I know I drafted him, and he's going to be sitting on my IR. Not out for the season, but still, Josh Doan sees a very good fantasy value bump with this increased deployment. Finally, we have the Vancouver Canucks. We have Elias Pettersson and JT Miller back. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in terms of them getting traded, but with them healthy, DeBrusk has been sent down to power play 2, and Garland has stayed on power play 1. Good news for Garland, really bad news for Jake DeBrusk. Moving on, let's talk about some new forward ads, some must-add players. I've separated new ads and roster percentage to low ads. I'm going to talk about them in a little bit. But just starting off with the new ads, we have Patrick Kane. He is back on power play 1. He is playing really well. This new coaching change has been big for him, and I do think his roster percentage is too low at the current moment, so please take a look at him. We also have Patrick Laine. I think he's only like 55% rostered. I don't love his even strength deployment and his even strength protection, but he is the #1 shot threat on that power play. He just ripped a power play goal last night, and I do think he's worth a look. We also have Jamie Benn. He is still power play 1, obviously, but he's seen an increased role in terms of ice time with Tyler Sagan and Mason Marchment out. Marchment will be back in the next couple of weeks or so, maybe in a week. I'm not exactly sure of his timeline, but in the short term, Ben has definitely seen a bump in his value. We also have Brock Nelson, who is back on power play 1. This is big for his value, guys. Nelson has not been power play 1 most of the year, so he sees a bump. Could be worth a look. And then we also have JJ Peterka. He has seen his ice time go back to normal lately. It was low for a bit. It was a little bit concerning, but he's still power play 1. He's in the top 6, and his production has been great. So at his current roster percentage of like 28%, he's absolutely a must-add player. We also have William Eklund, who is now power play 1 with Alex Wemberg out. Elite ice time, decent peripherals, playing well. I'm actually not too sure about the peripherals, but in general, this deployment is really good. So at his low roster percentage, he's definitely worth a look. Next up, we have Jack Quinn. Yes, he's line 3, which isn't great, but he's a guy who has struggled a lot this year, and he's finally starting to produce. The reason I like him as a must-add player is that he's power play 1, getting decent ice time, and he's only 3% rostered on Yahoo. So criminally under rostered for a guy that's on power play 1, a young player that could break out in the second half of the year. So yeah, at his current roster percentage, he is a no-brainer must-add forward. We also have Adam Fantilli on here. With Sean Monahan out, it's only 7 to 10 days. Fantilli finds himself on the top line and the top power play units, and he has produced in these roles. So great news for Fantilli, but unfortunately, this is only a short-term change. Once Monahan comes back, Fantilli will not see this deployment. So for the next week or so, he's a must-add player, but not for the long term. We also have Pittsburgh Penguins forward Michael Bunting. Bunting has been great. I thought he should have been on the power play 1 to start the year. That's what I projected him to be. He was great in that net front role last season, but he wasn't on the power play 1 to start the year, and his production suffered. Thankfully, they realized that he's good in the power play. I believe he's leading the Penguins in power play goals now, or second, or something like that. And his ice time has gone up considerably. So, you know, getting more power play time, getting more ice time, he is an under-rostered player that I think you should look at. Then we have a couple more players here. Ryan Donato, back on power play 1, great peripherals. Don't know how long the power play 1 deployment is going to last, but he is under-rostered in my opinion. We also have Shane Pinto. Pinto is still line 3, and he's not power play 1, I believe, but he is getting elite ice time, and he puts up solid peripherals. We're starting to see a little bit more production from him, so we'll see what happens here, but I think with his ice time, he needs to be considered in a deeper league. Then we have Capo Kakko. We've seen an ice time increase for Kakko. Not saying he is going to be great for the entire year because he's on the Kraken, and his ceiling is going to be capped with the amount of pieces that they have on their team, right? Like, they have such a deep roster of players. So yeah, in general, I like him because he has seen an ice time increase on the Kraken, going from the Rangers to the Kraken, puts up solid hits. So if your league counts hits, he could be a sneaky option. Then 2 more players here. We have Josh Doan, talked about earlier, but Dylan Guenther is injured, and Josh Doan is now in the top 6 and on power play 1. So definitely worth a look. We'll see if that deployment stays the same until Guenther comes back. But yeah, definitely under rostered. Then finally, we have Matt Coronado of the Calgary Flames. Coronado gets decent power play time, good even strength time. His ice time has been elite, solid peripherals, definitely under rostered. Moving on, let's talk about some defensemen adds. Jake Wallman, I think his roster percentage went down to like 55% on Yahoo, so he was dropped, and I think he should be picked back up. He's healthy, he's power play 1, he puts up great peripherals. It's a no-brainer. We also have Cam Fowler, who is still a must-add defenseman. He's not necessarily power play 1 because they're splitting the units, but still, he puts up decent peripherals, gets good ice time, and he's been producing. We also have Brent Burns. Shane Gostisbehere is out, not for the season, but for at least a couple of weeks or maybe even a month or so. And with Gostisbehere out, Burns is power play 1. We will see if that changes. Maybe Orlov gets a shot on there, but for now, Burns has definitely seen a bump and is now a must-add defenseman. We also have Jackson Lacombe. Lacombe puts up solid peripherals. He's getting the most power play time. He's producing. This is a no-brainer. Now, in terms of some defensemen in deeper leagues, I would say Mason Lowry would be a solid option. They did go back to a regular power play 1 last game, but still, earlier on in this week, Lowry was on power play 1. They were splitting the units, a 1A, 1B situation. Lowry was with Pasternak, so yeah, I do think low ride could have potential long term. Maybe they decide to move on from McAvoy on that top unit, and low ride gets a shot. We will see what happens. Only add as a speculative add in a deeper league. We also have Declan Chisholm. This is only a short-term add. He's power play one with Faber and Spurgeon out. We'll see what happens when Faber returns, but maybe Faber comes back and Chisholm gets some power play time, gets a decent amount of power play time. So yeah, could be an option in a deep, deep league. Then finally, we have Nate Schmidt. He was power play one last game with Aaron Ekblad out. He re-aggravated an injury. Could just be day-to-day, and Ekblad's back on that top unit. But if Ekblad is out long-term or, gets injured again, Schmidt could be a solid option. Then finally, we have two guys who I think have too low of a roster percentage. Jacob Chychrun, only 89%. I know I say only, but Chychrun at this point with his deployment, with his peripherals, should be like 98% rostered. Could just be dead leagues, but I thought I would include him on here. And then we have Lane Hudson. Hudson is 60% rostered. I get it. His peripherals are bad, but his deployment is amazing. He looks great out there. He's producing, and I do think his roster percentage should be higher. Okay, next up, let's talk about some goalie ads. Mackenzie Blackwood, doubt he's available unless you're in a casual or dead league, but his roster percentage on Yahoo is 79%, and it should be higher than this with the way that he's playing and the fact that he's the #1 starter on the Colorado Avalanche. Next, we have Logan Thompson. I understand he's been great all year, but if your concern is volume, he's going to see a volume bump with Lindgren put on IR. Now, there's a chance Lindgren's only out like 7 days. He has a concussion, but it could be a couple of weeks potentially. So if you're in a more shallow league and Logan Thompson is available and you need that volume, he's definitely a great guy to pick up. Next, we have Darcy Kemper. I've been including him on this list almost every week now because I just think his roster percentage is too low, and it's still too low. So take a look at him. We also have Sam Montembeault. He is playing better. He's getting volume. The Canadians are obviously winning a lot of games. He is streaky though, so be careful. We have Joey Decord. Missed a couple of games, but he's healthy now. His stats are way better than Grubauer's, so definitely worth a look. We have Destin Wolf, who is seeing more starts. Maybe he is going to be the #1 starter for the rest of the year. Could get that volume. We have Elvis from the Blue Jackets. Blue Jackets are playing decent. He's a volume guy. Streaky, though. He's going to be negative some games. Definitely be careful. Similar type of player is Sam Ersson. Ersson is back. He just had a shutout, but he is a streaky guy who gets a lot of volume. So know what you're dealing with. Finally, we have Anton Forsberg. I understand that other Senators goalie got a shutout, so maybe it might be a split. But with Allmark out week to week, there is a chance that Forsberg gets some decent volume. Moving on, I just want to talk about some forwards that have too low of a roster percentage. Normally, I would include all of these players in the forward ad section, but I wanted to split up the section because I just don't want to keep talking about these same players every week. I want to split them up into new ads and guys that I just think are under rostered. Obviously, some of the guys that I talked about earlier could fit into this category, but yeah, just to highlight these players that I keep talking about, the #1 guy is Valeri Nichushkin. I get it. He's injured. Maybe you need to win your week. Maybe you don't have an IR spot available, but this guy should not have a 55% roster percentage on Yahoo. Nichushkin is a guy who's power play 1 in the top 6, puts up very good peripherals. He is an absolute beast when he's healthy, and I do think if we see a good stretch of health, Nichushkin is going to see his roster percentage skyrocket to like 80 or 90%. If you dropped him, I think you're going to regret it, and if he is available, hold on to him, okay? He's going to be back soon from this injury. Hold on to him, and I guarantee if he stays healthy that you are not going to regret it. We also have some more players here. Joel Eriksson-Ek. He's healthy now. He's a bounce-back player, in my opinion. Once Kaprizov gets healthy, once they get healthy in general, Eriksson-Ek, I think, is due for a good second half. Puts up elite peripherals, too, especially if your league counts hits, so definitely take a look at him. We also have Matthew Barzal. I think his roster percentage is too low. He looks great out there. The Islanders, I think, are going to perform a little bit better on the power play moving forward. And yeah, I think his roster percentage is like 65% on Yahoo, so definitely take a look. Another player is Matt Zuccarello. His roster percentage is also around that 65% range. He is playing well even with Kaprizov out. And when Kaprizov is healthy, he's line 1 with him and on the power play 1 as well. So yeah, definitely think his roster percentage is too low. We also have Brian Rust, who I think has too low of a roster percentage. Elite deployment, elite peripherals. Buchnevich, I understand the 1A, 1B situation on the power play isn't great, but he still gets elite ice time, and we're seeing more production lately, and I just think his roster percentage of like 45% is too low. Next, we have Jonathan Drouin of the Avalanche. I understand the weird injury that he's been dealing with that they sort of alluded it to being a season-long thing where it's like sometimes he's going to need a game off. I don't know exactly what's going on with that, but when he is healthy, he is line 1 power play 1. And on a team like the Avalanche, that is pretty valuable. Next, we have Dmitry Voronkov of the Blue Jackets. I've included him in the last couple of videos, so I'm moving him into the roster percentage too low section because, yeah, I mean, his roster percentage is only 30%, and with his deployment, it is too low. Next, we have Dylan Holloway. Great ice time and protection. Roster percentage is still too low in my opinion. Jason Zucker, who is line 1, power play 1, decent peripherals. Roster percentage is way too low. Troy Terry, he's on a personal leave, but he was playing really well when he was healthy. So when he's back, I would definitely take a look at him. And then finally, Victor Olofsson of the Vegas Golden Knights. Doesn't put up the best peripherals, but he's power play 1, and he likes to shoot the puck. The last thing I want to do is highlight a couple of players that I think have too high of a roster percentage. I don't know if I'm going to do this every week, but I just was looking at roster percentage on Yahoo, and I thought I would talk about these players and tell you why they're a little bit overrated. And we are going to start off with Anthony Cirelli. He is 53% rostered, even though it's dropped considerably since the beginning of the year when he was super hot. I still think this is too high, guys. Unfortunately, he's not an offensive beast. He's not power play 1. He's not some sort of peripheral machine. I was telling you guys to sell high, and I still think it's too high. So if you're holding on, hoping that he's going to produce like he did at the beginning of the season, it's not going to happen. In contrast to Cirelli, Bo Horvat is only 62% rostered on Yahoo. He's power play 1. He puts up better peripherals. So yeah, that's just an example as to why I think Cirelli has too high of a roster percentage. With these other players here, we have Jake DeBrusk. Maybe DeBrusk is good in the second half if Miller or Pettersson gets traded, because that would mean DeBrusk would go up to power play 1. But as of right now, when everyone is healthy, DeBrusk is not on that top unit. So as long as he's not power play 1, 54% rostered is too high. We also have Connor McMichael. His roster percentages also went down considerably. I told you guys to sell high as well, but I still think 54% roster is too high. The Capitals, in my opinion, are due for some regression in general, and McMichael is not power play 1. So I think it's time to let go of Connor McMichael. The last player here is Claude Giroux. Listen, I understand he just had 3 assists, so people are going to be mad about this, and we're going to see his roster percentage go up because of this, because we saw the same thing happen with Jordan Staal, who just had a monster week. But the problem with Giroux is that he's not power play 1. And there's a ton of players that are of similar roster percentage or lower, guys that I've talked about in this video, that in my opinion are better. So yeah, not a fan of Giroux at this roster percentage. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.